Welcome. My name is Dr. Corey Richardson. I am the CEO and Clinical Director of ICGH treatment centers across Western North Carolina. This is a talk today on new strategies to help unhoused persons, and it is funded by the Rural Communities Opioid Response Program, a part of HRSA. There are no conflicts of interest. There exist no potential conflicts of interest, including my employment, consultancy, stock ownership, paid expert testimony, patent applications, registrations, and grants or other funding. For those who are watching this webinar live, this is how they were submitting questions and comments. At the end of the talk today, there will be an email, and you'll be able to email me directly any of your questions or comments. So let's talk initially about the stigma of being unhoused and unsheltered. And generally speaking, it might look something like this. This is a quote-unquote homeless person, and it often brings this kind of an image to mind. And it's typically an unkempt man. He might be elderly, living on the streets, and assumed he'd be struggling, obviously, with mental illness or possibly substance use issues. And very often this may be the reality for a percentage of those without housing, but it does vary widely, and it includes families with children, young adults, couples, single men and women, and even unaccompanied youth. I'd like to start just a little bit about some of the terms that are are preferred today. And unhoused doesn't seem to have the stigma that the homeless has. For whatever purposes. And it's been a very comfortable term that I've acclimated to and transitioned to. And this is just somebody lacking a fixed, regular, adequate nighttime residence and living in temporary accommodations like a shelter or in places not meant for human habitation. Might be households fleeing domestic violence and similar threatening conditions, and may also be considered like families who are doubled up. So maybe several different families in the same domicile, or those in imminent danger that are having to leave and becoming unhoused. Generally speaking, unhoused does include sheltered, so that when we talk about that, it's really a broad topic about doesn't have a house. And that can include stuff like couch surfing that we often talk about. Juxtaposed with that would be someone that is unsheltered. And we'll talk about it today as well, but this is people who live in places not meant for human habitation. So in public, on the streets, in cars, wooded areas, abandoned buildings, under bridges, etc. Let's look briefly at a few national statistics. An estimated 500,000 people, about 552, 830 are unsheltered today, unhoused today. About 48% of those were also unsheltered, meaning they didn't have a shelter, didn't have a roof over their head. That's a large percentage of those who are unhoused. Quote unquote homeless persons have an average life expectancy of around 50 years, which is much less than the general population. An estimated 148,000 of those are people in families that are unhoused, and that makes around 57,000 family households that are unhoused. An estimated 16,000 plus people in families were living unsheltered. That means in the streets, in a car, in another place not meant for human habitation. And a lot of our work that we'll talk about and show you pictures of, that might be a tarp out in the woods, some chicken coop out in the middle of nowhere that nobody uses anymore. Really destitute, really difficult conditions when we do our outreach to really connect with people. It's hard to see them living like this. Around 86,000 homeless individuals are also what was considered chronically homeless or homeless for extended period of time, years. In North Carolina, where we are, the unhoused individuals are around almost 7,000. Unhoused families are about 2,447. The percentage of those that are unsheltered, around 24%. And that makes approximately 383 persons in our service area. And so the service area for this HRSA grant, this RCOR grant, is Cleveland and Lincoln County. And our service area also includes Gaston. So about 383 persons identified were homeless, and that represents about 10% of the total population for that service area. I will say this, with our work doing outreach, we really do believe that these numbers are dramatically lower because of movement, influx of people, um, difficulty and finding them and tracking. I think the numbers are much lower here than what we are experiencing in North Carolina at this time. So these are our treatment centers. We are a treatment agency fundamentally across Western North Carolina. We have 5 sites, and we have a statewide low barrier program as well. And so during the years, we were always challenged with housing and challenged with transportation. At one point, we were challenged with getting those who were uninsured medication. As providers, we ourselves are overwhelmingly in long-term recovery, and so we struggle with addiction and trauma. Many of us have suffered incarceration, were unsheltered, and entered treatment. We began working programs as well. That might be AA and NA, so really recovery community programs alongside of our treatment. And I think our model of care reflects our own personal journeys as well as our clinical training and experience with a focus on lived experience. We'll talk a lot about lived experience today. But also, of course, there's a biopsychosocial and some say spiritual model. And we really do apply that as to every treatment plan that we create with a fundamental core behavioral intervention. And we use in our program 12-step facilitation model because of the need for lived experience. And this is actually a slide that I presented at an opioid panel for our current governor, Roy Cooper. So let's talk a little bit more about lived experience and to better understand that part of addiction and recovery journey, um, uh, specifically those who are unhoused and those who are unhoused as well as unsheltered, and then a lot of the trauma associated with living in these conditions for years. Here's 2 of our peer support specialists, and they're going to share their story.
I want to thank, this is Alex and Casey. I want to thank them today for coming in to talk about their experiences. We were talking about the unhoused population and the unsheltered population, and while they're struggling with a substance use disorder. Casey and Alex are both peer support specialists, and they do counseling as well. They are grant funded, and they provide care inside of the shelters, so they are literally embedded in shelters in their counties, and they also do outreach to the unhoused populations, unsheltered populations in the encampments. And just honored to work with them and talk with them today about their experiences. Um, and Alex, if you want to go ahead and start today, talk to us a little bit about what addiction was like when it came to housing for you.
Okay, so it started all around when I was 18, 19 years old. Moved out of mom and dad's house. I thought Alex had the master plan, and I was just couch surfing for a little while, and I got into it with some people, and my addiction just progressed and got worse and worse, and I became unhoused. And I've been in 4 states trying to get sober. I've been incarcerated many times. It ultimately ended up with me living underneath a bridge in the woods in a tent city, and it took it took a little while for me to really see that there's a different way to live. The Department of Corrections really helped me out with that. I was sentenced to a treatment facility, and from there I went to another treatment facility and then another one. So I spent 15 months in treatment altogether. And once I found out that there was different ways to live and just a different way to think, and that people actually did care about me. Once I got to experience the hot showers, the food, the clothes, the meetings, the therapy, the groups, just it all combined. It really helped me out, and here I am today, 5 years later, being able to return the same gift that was given to me. So it's awesome.
Thank you. Casey, do you have a similar experience?
Somewhat, yes. Department of Corrections also helped me get clean. I got addicted to pain pills after I had my last kid. I was happily married. I had a great life, great husband. I think I had some postpartum depression going on. The Percocet made me feel like the perfect person. I didn't really understand the pain pill thing. It wasn't as big then as it is now. You know, it's well known as being addictive. Um, so of course it progressed to heroin, me couch surfing, putting myself in uncomfortable, uncompromising positions to have somewhere to sleep at night. I got, of course, I got charges. I was in and out of jail. I got sentenced to prison. I went to prison where I was able to get my head clean and be able to think for myself again and not be driven by drugs. And from there, I knew that I had to learn how to live because I didn't know how to be an adult. So I went to long-term treatment, and I was very successful in long-term treatment. I was a house manager while I was there. From there, I moved into sober living so I could still be around like-minded people and still have that support. And then now I live in my own home and I get to work with people who have gone through some of the same things that I went through and connect with them.
So it sounds like the structure, whether it was forced at one point or not, shelter, activities of daily living, bathing, eating, substance, was a big part of really changing your mindset and getting started in treatment. Some people may not realize that you can be incarcerated and used the entire time.
Definitely.
So it's not as if incarceration caused you to get clean. And we know a lot of people will spend decades in prison and get out and use the first day. And so, but it was absolutely a part of your journey, and it did open up that opportunity for you to move from incarceration to treatment that included housing. That's a lot of what a lot of us who are in the clinical world, the peer support, have talked about, heard about. Can you get into a little bit more depth, if you will, about what it feels like the very first time you realize, I've got to sleep out in the woods or somewhere else without a shelter? And then to just help inform those that are watching today what that experience is like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember the very first time I was kicked out of my buddy's house, and at that point I had a backpack and a suitcase. Everything I owned was in those two things, and I called everybody I could think about calling, pretty much everybody in my contacts list, and I thought about anywhere I could go, and nothing. I had nothing. I was completely in a state of panic and shock. I can't believe this has actually happened. And that's a really rough feeling to know that you think the whole world has turned their back on you, and you think that no one wants nothing to do with you. But in all reality, our disease did this, we did this.
Yeah.
So, I would say after a couple of weeks of living under a bridge or in a tent, kind of just get used to it, and it becomes acceptable for you. And for me, I thought that that's all I was capable of doing. I thought that was my best, and I just accepted it, and that's that.
So the hours are moving from 6 to 7 and 7 to 8, and nothing, and you're having to figure out, well, what is covered, or where I can be left alone, or where I can be safe. Then you get up in the morning. Did you do that for weeks at a time, or was it one night or 2 nights?
Well, it started off with about a few days, and then someone gave me a chance, and I ruined that chance. And then it was a couple weeks, and then someone gave me a chance, and I ruined that chance. And then it ended up to be to where my longest actually being unhoused in the woods was about 7-8 months.
7 8 months.
Yeah.
And when it came to bathing or other types of things like brush your teeth or hygiene and stuff, how did you manage that?
So I really didn't. Sometimes I wouldn't bathe for a week or two. Brushing my teeth, I hate to say it, but that didn't really happen much at all. I didn't care about those things. You know, I just cared about who can come pick me up so I can go steal from Walmart? Who can come pick me up so I can go steal from an individual?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how can I finesse my way into getting another hit of either whatever it may be?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And Casey, what about you? You said a little bit about having to find somewhere to stay for you. What was that like to walk into a home and really not know probably what was going to happen?
Very scary. It was very uncomfortable. I hated myself, and so of course I had to use more and more drugs to be okay with it, to not care, to not feel. Um, but I mean, it was what my life was. It went on for about 8 years. You know, begging people to let me stay with them. Sometimes I could stay for a few months, but eventually people would just get sick of me and tell me, you know, I couldn't stay there anymore.
During that period of time, it sounds like drugs, which were our coping skill, became more and more to numb us from our life situations. During that time, did either of you even consider treatment as an option? While you were using more and trying to find a place for that day, or was treatment even something you honestly considered at that time?
In the back of my mind, I knew I needed help, and I knew I needed treatment, but I didn't want it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to do it.
I can definitely connect.
I expected to die there, and
Yeah.
I was okay with that.
Yeah, there comes a point, I think, in that active use where you just are so demoralized from your life situation, so hopeless and helpless that you just use as much as you could get, hoping that you're not going to wake from that. And I think that was also why a lot of people didn't want to be around me individually. Is there was a fear that I would either my behavior was so erratic that would draw attention to their apartment or whatever they were doing, but also they would have to call 911 or they would have to do something, leave me. And there were times when I was left where I was. How does this experience it? A lot of us are in and out of housing, and people are trying to talk to us, and we're just like the words are just not connecting. How does this experience allow you to help other people? Is that part of that kind of way to engage somebody who is unsheltered today, out there actively using, seeing you coming up? How does that work?
I think for me, I'm able to really connect with them. With my lived experience. If an addict talks to another addict, we know, that they have been through the same things that we have. And I think that makes them more comfortable to be open and honest. And the more honest you are, the more we're able to help. So just, my lived experience, I'm able to get people to open up and feel comfortable with me and trust me. And then they see, that I'm living a happy, healthy, productive life today. And they want that. It gives them hope. It gives them encouragement, I think, that they can do better.
So that lived experience of addiction, then you could even take that one step further and say, I too have been without a home. I too have had to do things to find a place for the evening or stay out there, out in the weather during very harsh times. And I too have been there. And so I hear you saying, and it's what I've experienced, is that people don't feel judged with us.
Right.
I might tell somebody, whatever you've done, I've done twice. And so I just try to talk to people in a way that, and I think that there's an authenticity that happens when we share that the walls just fall down and that they start to open up. And like you said, if you can do it, they can do it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How about you? How does it inform you, this kind of, and how, when you do the outreach and stuff, you can, what happens then?
So when me and Casey went to give out those bags around Christmas time, we got to talk to quite a few individuals that were unhoused, and I got to really relate to them, and I knew how they felt, I knew what they were thinking, and I think it's just a better connection there. I remember when I was homeless, I heard voices. I was in my tent and I heard voices, and the lady was giving out stuff, and it took me a lot just to get out of my tent to actually go talk to them. You know, I didn't really want anything to do with them, but I feel like if it was somebody that was in my position in their past, I think we could have maybe connected on a deeper level, and it could have been a little bit better for me.
So just pulling your head out of that tent, even though you probably needed some of those supplies or that food or whatever, the shame, it
Absolutely.
sounds like
Yep.
the shame was what was really or making it much more difficult. I think that's true. People who are going to soup kitchens today, that first time, and then I think we've talked about becoming acclimated to this way of living, just like we become acclimated to not being employed and using drugs every day, the people that we associate with. And that's why so many of us from so many different backgrounds end up in the same place. If not incarcerated, it's prison or obviously dead, you know. But I can see that if somebody that was like me came up to me in that situation and said, hey, you don't gotta live like this anymore. You can call me anytime. It would probably be very, very different. So, well, thank you very much. I'm honored to work with both of you. I'm so honored to talk to you today about your journey. I hope that this will inform other people who work with this population, whether they can share with some appropriate disclosure themselves about their addiction and their lack of a home during that time, or they can connect in that treatment plan with a peer support specialist that has some lived experience will allow them to really help them gain some hope and motivation. So thank you both very much.
And so as we developed and as an agency and we started to seek state and federal funding for the uninsured, we started to develop stronger ties to shelters and saw a need for transitional housing. Uh, Partial hospitalization, IOP, peer support, free medication, referral to services. And so many who work in shelters do so really with very good intentions, but may have very little knowledge. Um, so during our journey of developing as a treatment agency, I also teach at Wake Forest as a lecturer through the School of Medicine at Northwest AHEC. And we started to develop educational opportunities to deliver directly to shelters and transitional housing about how to work with this population. Later on, when we were unable to secure transportation from local providers for the persons that were in shelters or people that were unsheltered so they could get to our treatment centers to get the services they needed, um, we found that we needed to purchase our own vehicles. And it was pretty much the same thing when we opened our first clinic-based pharmacy. We weren't able to partner with other pharmacies locally for really low-cost medication for those who are uninsured. Um, to be honest, that opened the door for our for the state or the MCO or our region to start bundling medication with services because we had complained about it for so long. But we were the first to offer that in-house through a clinic-based pharmacy. Um, Similarly, when our patients were on, the persons that we serve were on MAT, housing programs did not want to participate with us because of MAT. And so several years ago, we had to develop our own concept of transitional housing, and we started Day One Recovery Homes through our property management LLC. So the first thing that we did is we did create a limited liability corporation separate from the treatment agency itself, and we rented our first two duplexes, and one was for men and one was for women. And we found a location near our treatment center, but it was also near some local factories that would hire those who had been justice or who were justice involved. In these duplexes and apartment buildings, there were two persons per room. And we amended policy and procedure somewhat from other transitional housing programs that really would fit our needs within a construct of social model. It's a social model management style, if you will, by peer support specialists. And so this program is run solely by the peer supports, and they also offer life skills and basic education. They will find out employment opportunities or employment training through local agencies like NC Works or Voc Rehab, and there is a component of recovery community participation. We also found a lot of stigma within the recovery community related to MAT. So we started our own medication assisted 12-step program, which is a virtual online program. So it's very easy, no matter where they are in transitional housing, to participate. And so here's our donations. Here's our rooms, and we were very excited. And I don't think these were the greatest departments in the county that we started with, but we did a lot of work to clean them up, and we were very excited about the opportunity. Subsequently, we demonstrated to the communities that we serve really quality transitional housing programs. And so we partnered with HUD, Section 8, and through our local community, our local government, to create voucher programs. These are program vouchers, not leases, so that people are able to live in our housing program while they participate. But if they quit participating, then the program voucher does not work. And this was before the pandemic, and we were able to purchase this apartment building, which was really mind-blowing at the time, and very excited about that as well. And this is a 12-bed unit, and via HUD, allowing us to use a voucher per bedroom, but only one person per bedroom. So the capacity is a little bit less here, but we found, unlike our Lincoln program where we had a county fund through those who had recently been in jail, that fund, which wasn't a lot of money, was able to use that for people that were recently in jail, so justice involved, but only as they've been in jail in that county. So it reduced recidivism for that county. In this county, we had HUD participating with us. In the first rented duplexes that we had, we found an opportunity really to upgrade to a very nice community, not really in a very, not too far off a business section, but a very nice residential area that was a good fit for us. This is the upper part of this duplex, and there's a lower part of the duplex as well. In this these are 8 beds, 4 for women, 4 for men. Nice yard, barbecue, just a real upgrade, I think, for us. And this was a home that we also purchased before the pandemic. And next, I'd like to go to another interview around transitional housing. And this is more of a management style interview about peer support specialists that run our program.
Hello, and this is our second talk of the day. We have people from the company. They're all peer support specialists as well as counselors. This is Melissa, Casey, Rebecca, and Alex. And we're going to just dive in a little bit deeper into the management of a housing program, a transitional housing program that is really supported by peer supports themselves. So it's kind of a social model of management, if you will. And so if you guys want to talk a little bit about how you work with people in housing and how it's informed by your own lived experience. Want to go ahead and start, Melissa?
Sure. So before coming here, I lived in 2 different programs. One was residential treatment and another was transitional living. And so I took a lot of what I learned there, the rules that I had, to apply them to the program we have here because it worked for me. So I feel like there were some benefits to it. And I always tell my people that I'm not going to put you through anything or expect anything of you that wasn't expected of me. So I've kind of used my own experience to guide the way I've managed housing.
And is that with persons one-on-one as well as like writing policy and procedure?
Yeah, exactly. Both.
Okay.
A lot of the rules we have in place came from programs we've been in because it worked. For those programs, we learned things from these rules, so we applied them to our program as well so that these folks could learn things.
And it sounds to me like the things that probably weren't the best in other programs that might not have been administered by peer supports, maybe you might have change that or alter that in some way so that it would work better in a program that's managed by peer support specialists?
Yeah, well, a lot of the programs I was in were for women only. So there's different situations and different things are going to apply to the men in the program. So some of the stuff I just had to leave behind. It wasn't anything I could bring with me.
All right. Casey, what about you?
Mine says a lot, as Melissa's was. I too, as I said yesterday, I lived in long-term treatment and then sober living homes, and I was able to bring that with me too. And then another big thing that I speak on a lot is about rules being important and learning how to follow the rules, and because that's gonna help, in their life in the future whenever they get out of sober living.
Is it hard for you sometimes to talk about quote unquote rules or the way things are done here, having gone through it yourself, because there seems to be a fine line between, peer and kind of guiding somebody as opposed to we're administrative and this is dictatorial and authoritarian.
No, I don't really do that. I'll talk about some of my experiences that I went through with learning how to follow the rules and the struggles that I had, and that in a sense gets them more comfortable with me and more open, and then they can relate to me a little bit more.
Okay.
And they're not so hard to say no.
And so having been guided by these types of rules in another program that got you where you are today, does that allow you to kind of talk to them about why they're in place?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it helps show them that we're not just trying to tell them what to do, or we're trying to help them.
It's not an ego boost about control.
Right.
There are some essential parts of long-term recovery that maybe they're not really picking up initially.
Yeah.
Okay. Rebecca, what do you think?
I'm a little different on this because I didn't live in the house settings and stuff. I couch surfed.
Right.
And I did the homeless thing in the community. So my approach was, let's take what we've learned from these other programs that have something so unique that it's going to work. It's going to, this lived experience. We keep talking about lived experience. Well, we can't put these people in a captive setting. Like, you've got to do as we say. They've got to learn on their own. We got to give them that little bit of trust, so to speak. And they're learning as they go. So they may stumble along the way. They may stumble, but this is where the peer model is so critical. We come in as peer support with our lived experience. We've been there. We've done this. So let's find that solution. I just didn't want to be like all the other programs. I want this to show how vital peer support is and how when you embed peer support, even in a housing model, it's going to work, and then our people that have been there for some time, they're going on now wanting to be peer support. Mm-hmm. They're seeing how vital this role is and what a difference it makes. And so we're helping them now become peers.
Yeah. When they have that idea in their head that maybe they could help, like you're helping as a peer support, does that help with retention Absolutely. Of that person? Does it help with motivation? Yeah, it's like an extra little bit. There's some motivating factors I can remember that were very much punitive. It might be probation parole, it might be something else like that. But this seems to be much more about hope, about engaging people where they are. We talked earlier today about the couch surfing, housing scarcity, or housing insecurity rather, and being unhoused and even unsheltered. What does that do for you when you talk about your own challenges with housing? How does that inform you to engage with other people when it comes to the management of a housing program? I mean, is it something that you can talk to comfortably about appropriate self-disclosure? Like, I know, does it help you when people are maybe challenging the rules of a house? How does that fit into all of this?
Well, so, yes, it does. Being able, with my own lived experience, I see how important it is when someone comes to us and says, I'm homeless. That's that's how they say it. And I know that we have a window here. If we don't act and get this person in place, they have very minimal hope that we're really going to help them. They're used to doors being slammed, so much red tape to go through. We try to make it as simple and as quickly as we possibly can from the minute we get the intake packet till we actually place them. And I always have in the back of my mind my own situation, how even with treatment, I didn't really believe they could help me. This was just a temporary moment just to get me, not sick or well for temporary. So it's the same concept for a bed. They can help me for a minute. At least it'll give me a second till I get to my plan B, because that's the way the wheels go. So, but then they come here and it's a little different. And then we've got the life skills, and we're showing them. We're not just telling them. We talk about accountability, but then we explain it. Instead of just barking at them, giving them rules and saying, "This is what you do." We're showing them. We're walking right beside them. And I really think that's what sets us different and why we have the success rates that we do.
So where MAT kind of brings them in the door, it sets up an opportunity for the counseling and the peer support and recovery meetings and all that. What you're kind of saying to me is going from unhoused, unsheltered to here's an opportunity. It sets up an opportunity for them to get the rest of it, like the real peer support, the real recovery. For a lot of people like myself who remember their own journey in addiction and recovery, relapse is much closer than you think. It sounds like them walking out the door back to what they're comfortable with, being unhoused, unsheltered, is a lot easier than I think a lot of people watching today might appreciate. In a lot of people's minds, why wouldn't they stay there? They finally have a roof over their head. But if you've been kind of acclimated to this new lifestyle, you're kind of looking for a reason, and you really do marry that to your addictive process. You're kind of looking for a reason to get angry and walk out. Has anybody ever done that? Something like you, Alex? The idea of like trying to find a reason to walk out the door, trying to find a reason that this isn't working. Do you have any?
Absolutely. I've been in 4 different states trying to get sober at different rehabs, and walked out the door in all of them, including one time I was in Boston and it was snowing and it was 17 degrees, and all I had was a trash bag full of clothes, and I just said, I'm out of here. Didn't know where I was going or what, but thank God I finally got into the treatment facility I did. I lived in sober living for 15 months at 3 different places, and that's what it took for me. And I took in the housing management now, I can, like Melissa was talking about, apply the rules that worked, and then the stuff that really didn't work, that was just silly, just leave those.
Yeah. So do you think that in a situation where somebody is trying to disengage, that you're able to either de-escalate or talk authentically about your own experiences and have to get them to maybe cool down, stay where they are, maybe reevaluate the decision to walk out the door?
Yep, and that's where the lived experience comes in that we've been talking about, because I've been there, I've left, I've stayed, I've done it all, so I can really have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, look, man, I know where you're at, I know what you're thinking. Maybe we should just take one more night to sleep on it, and weigh up the pros and the cons. And usually that pros list is this long.
Once you slow down and work with them to reevaluate the pros, I absolutely see that. What other challenges do you see other than walking out the door? Maybe it might be repeat use, a slip of some kind that you've been able to address, and you've done it as a peer support rather than a house manager or something.
Well, recovery is hard, and it's the harder option of, the staying or leaving, using or not using. But when you're able to sit with somebody where they're at and beside them while they're feeling these things they've never felt before, you just like hold their hand through it. You tell them you've been there. You know it hurts. You know it's hard. But you just give them a little bit of hope that if you just hang on for one more day, if you just do that a day at a time, then it gets easier with time.
It sounds like that's part of your own journey in recovery is to do this work. So there's an authenticity thing there, even if you're just with them authentically. I don't always know exactly what to say, but I can be there. What do you think? Have there been situations where you have been challenged by somebody's behavior and you had to really draw upon lived experience to address that?
Yes, but I think, at the end of the day, as management, we also have to think about the home as a whole too. So there's like a very fine line. We want to connect with people. We want everybody to succeed, but we also have to look at everybody in the home.
Because behavior could sabotage somebody else's journey,
Right.
their recovery, their treatment goal, reaching their treatment goal.
Yes. So we have had to help people go to detox before they could come back into the home. But if they're willing to go to detox, then they can come back into the home.
I like that idea that where some people would think that just because we've gone through it, we're going to take a lot of liberties, allow a lot of things to happen. And I find that it's pretty much not that way at all. That we have a concept of structure and accountability, but we also don't want to enable people, which I think, having gone through it ourselves, I think we can kind of differentiate between support and help and encouragement, enabling. And I like the idea that you're telling me about. It has to be about the home as well.
Right.
So in your program, Becca, you have you have cameras in every bedroom, right? But not the bathroom. You have cameras outside of the house as well. True. You have some rules, I think, about transportation. Like maybe about who can have a car and who can, and who can work and who can't, stuff like that. Has that worked without having somebody there 24/7? Because most of these programs are going to have somebody on staff living there, watching there, usually at a desk. I've been at some. They're at a desk all night long. Somebody works the night shift, and they're kind of like the traffic cop of the house. Has this worked so far?
So uniquely, yes. It's been an ongoing journey. We had to figure out what worked, what didn't work. But what we have found is that these people are so eager to be a part of something. And when they come in and they see, wait a minute, this is really working. They're not just spinning a memorized line at me. Like, they're walking with me. They're not stigmatizing me. They're not approaching me like their demeanor is larger than me. They're simply saying, hey, you're a human and we're going to treat you like a human first. And we're going to get through this together. And even when we have had people that went out and haven't been abused. And so instead of just kicking them out, we worked with them to find that solution. Let's get you back on track. If this is what you want, we can get you there. But you're going to do the work. We're going to guide you and give you every resource that we can. And light bulbs start going off. And it is actually amazing to watch, actually. And so to take that back around, you've got people who are so eager to follow the guidelines today. They will call you. They will communicate with you. The elders of the home, they like to refer to themselves. The ones that's been there the longest, they kind of unofficially take that role of just kind of the flow of the house, and taking in the new people that come in and saying, hey, let's communicate. We got to get through this. And we do understand every person is different, and every person is going to, they're going to have a different need, a different goal, and that's where having peer support involved is so critical. I can't stress that enough, because we're dealing with a lot of personalities, a lot of different walks of life, and we're meeting them where they're at. And I think validating them, letting them be who they authentically are, is so critical in this, because we're seeing dreams come alive. They come in so broken with their head down, and now they are supervisors, plant managers. One's going for a bachelor's degree. Like, these are really unfolding right before our eyes.
And so transitional housing, obviously a lot of people would never get into it because of cost. And so one of the things I know you guys have started to do and has been successful is you graduate, as you start to work, they start to ask them to pay a little bit more. And when they've been there for quite a while and they're doing well, they give them like a cash reduced rate. So limited funding can be used on persons that are coming right off of the street. What about food? And do you use any kind of resources locally for people coming out of jail or coming out of, unsheltered situations?
We have a couple really good food banks in the Cobb County area, and I've worked with one of the day shelters that they'll put together a little immediate package for somebody coming in that has absolutely nothing, and then we help them get set up with the government resources to have their own food and cutting.
Oh, beautiful. So there are some resources. It might be SSI. It might not. It might be just what's available. And then you've made specifically some contacts in the community where people want to do good work.
Yes.
I know that one is an interesting one. I think a personality that we have locally is a beauty queen of some kind. That she makes huge donations of
Yeah.
hygiene products and other things. So making contacts with, and I'll just say for our company, of all people, United Beverage, they say we want to give back and we want to help support those that are struggling with a substance use disorder or alcohol use disorder. And so making good contacts, either corporate or individuals, to help with the funding. So it might have been like your county sheriff's office, it might have been HUD, and we've talked a little bit about this in the talk today. So that's interesting, your creative ways of funding so that the core funding of supporting the residents, you can really extend it. So it's kind of like leveraging the community contacts. Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you thought as you were coming in would be important you'd like to share? This is a national audience. We want to inform people about maybe there's somebody watching today that they're not in recovery specifically, they work in the field, but maybe they would want to hire peer support to do some of the management like you guys do. Is there anything that we've missed today you'd like to share that maybe you wanted to talk about?
It's extremely rewarding to watch these people grind their lives away.
Yeah, to come in with maybe a small bag of clothes and get a job and connect with family. And some of your cases I know are DHSc and they have an opportunity. So for your HUD program, it's a HUD voucher program, I know you found housing for women who have reconnected with children, and you make those connections over in section of housing. So I can understand that. I absolutely think they're interesting. And it,
Sorry, there's
Yeah.
a feeling that you get. Me personally, I've been homeless, I've been in programs, I've been sleeping in my car or couch surfing, and then to come to this place in life where I get to hand somebody a key to their home, you can't. I don't know how to explain that feeling. It'll bring you to tears every time. It feels really good.
they don't have to look for a place to sleep.
Right, and they've been on the street or I had one guy that was on couches for 5 years, and just to change that for them is amazing.
If you have treatment providers out there that are not addressing immediately housing, they're just not going to use the treatment plans. They're just not going to do it. And that's just wonderful that we've been able to develop this, but we wouldn't have been able to do it without really the engaged peer support specialists and counseling people.
I think it's important just to look at the disease in the person and remember it is a disease.
So
And that don't penalize these people. Don't, I get it, it's frustrating, but that's just not going to solve the problem.
So having that lived experience allows you to say, well, there's going to be some early emotionality. There's going to be some, obviously projecting, and they're going to try to get out. That's your disease talking, if you will. And having gone through it, we can identify that probably pretty quickly.
Yes.
And then you get to see over time the real person that you get to, in recovery. So. Well, thank you all very much today for participating. This has been very informative, and I'll just say it's an honor and privilege to work with you guys. So thank you.
Wonderful. So we have a little bit of time left today, about 10 minutes or so. Really, our ORCOR grant has really been helpful to reaching the unhoused population and those who are in shelters. So we had a very strong anti-stigma campaign, doing some outreach, and I think that's been a big part of our working with our stakeholders to actually create this with United Way, health department, our coalitions, our law enforcement, getting together to create the anti-stigma. I think campaigns that we have really carried over into the other work that is really specifically the unhoused populations, the unsheltered. From that anti-stigma working group that we did, we moved over into creating some drawstring bags that had some real strong anti-stigma messaging. End the stigma, addiction is disease, MAT is recovery. We put our phone number on there. We take these out, obviously with our phone number, our website has online intake packets, so they can reach us. But right here, through our grant, we were able to purchase some supplies that were definitely needed. They do include harm reduction for those people, and so we were able to offer some education when we go out to the unhoused, unsheltered population. And this may include tents, blankets, socks, menstruation products, ponchos, gloves, underwear. And so when we are going out and we do find the various encampments, and which do move a lot, we're able to engage people where they are. And if they're on MAT or other medications, we do give them the lock boxes or locking pill bottles, just to keep it safe. But hygiene, we know that hygiene is hard, so we are very open to bringing everything that they need that they can, but telling them about housing, telling them even if they've had a very bad experience in shelters, offering them some transitional housing like our program, to support them and bring them out of the elements. An important aspect of this part of our program, as I said, was engaging other stakeholders, whether it's the health department, United Way, law enforcement, the shelters, and making it more of a community effort. So when people are going out there, they can see the need, but they can also see real people. And that's been a real big part of what we're doing too. And this is one of those events where we're packing our bags together, and we brought community stakeholders from both counties. And then when we deliver these bags, we do the same. But keep in mind, our peer supports are there. They're handing out cards, and they're saying, hey, if you just want to talk, reach out to me. And these bags do include appropriate harm reduction for those individuals that desire it. Again, more of the areas that we were serving across these two counties in Lincoln and Cleveland County, North Carolina. And finally, here is a drone that we've been using in Cleveland County, the Shelby Police Department, and we also have the same drone over in Lincoln County. When persons are moving and it's hard to keep up, or they're new encampments, we're able to find them a little bit more quickly. In the winter times, it's easier because of heat sensing. And finally today, some of the funds, direct funds through memorandums of agreement with transitional housing, have been used to support direct payments for transitional housing. As I said earlier, the peer supports through the grant are inside of shelters. There's inside of, and they're doing direct outreach to the unhoused populations as part of their full-time jobs. They're also in jails, so when people are leaving that are justice involved, the jails are coming back from prisons, they have nowhere to live, they're there, and they're also working with DSS. So this is one of the really neat opportunities because of our good relationships throughout the counties in rural North Carolina. We've been able to place peer support specialists with a lot of agencies we wouldn't have otherwise. Here are the references I've used today. Here is my contact information about our agency, our different programs, whether it's housing, our pharmacy services, our recovery community online. And if you want to reach me directly at crichardson@integratedcarehickory.com, really like to talk to you. Again, thank you very much for participating today with the webinar.